Hello uglies and welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be answering the question, how would I judge Dragula Season 4? Last year I did a video asking how I would judge Dragula Season 3 and that video was received very well when I did it. And I had for some reason been putting off doing another Dragula video. I honestly don't know why, but when October rolled around I was like I should do one, so I put out a poll, asked you all which season of Dragula I should do a How Would I Judge video on, and y'all decided that you wanted to see season 4, which is kind of the season that I was wanting to do as well, so it really all worked out. I watched almost all of season 4 when it was airing, but I haven't revisited it like at all since it aired. So this was like a fun little like trip down memory lane for me to kind of re-experience the season in full and come up with my opinions for it. The rule is to remember, as always, the season has to be as long as season 4 of Dragula originally was, which was 10 episodes, 8 competitive episodes, the reunion, and the finale. And the performances and the challenges need to be based off of how well someone did or how people would predict they would do. So I'm not just going to put somebody in the top when they were originally in the bottom or vice versa, unless there is strong fan support for that being the case. And as always, the goal is to act as if I am the head judge and craft this season however I can imagine to make it as fun and eventful as possible, while also being fair with my judging of the season by combining my own personal tastes and what was shown to us on the show. So let us get into it with episode 1. Now, big change with episode 1 of this season. Originally, there were only 10 contestants in the first episode. If you don't know, competitor Saint, who was on this season, was on season 3 of Dragula and got eliminated in episode 2. And then through a special that they did called the Boulet Brothers Dragula Resurrection, which she won, she was able to guarantee herself a spot on the next season, this being season 4. So she comes in here in the first episode and competes along with everybody else normally. And, you know, somebody gets eliminated and all that's good. But then in the second episode, the Boulets reveal that Dali is also coming back and is going to be on this season. Dali was the runner-up of Resurrection. And that never really sat right with me. Like, you're telling me that the person who lost the fucking show, whose whole purpose was to crown somebody the winner of Resurrection who would come back and be resurrected into the next season, the person who got second, did not win it, is able to come back and skip an episode? Like, that's annoying to me. I don't like that at all. Like, I like that Dolly's on this season. His drag is so fucking cool. But, like, that's just not fair to me to, like, make the winner do an extra episode in comparison to somebody who was the runner-up. Like, what do you mean? So, instead of, you know, reversing it and being like, Dolly's episode 1 and Saint comes in episode 2, no, they're both here episode 1. That's what's gonna happen here. We're starting out with the 11-person cast and all the 11 people on it. So, in the first episode, the contestants have to reimagine horror icons, make looks for them, and present them on the main stage. Now, everybody competed in this challenge originally, except for Dolly. Dolly did not compete in this challenge, but we do know for a fact that if Dolly were to have competed in this challenge, his horror movie icon inspiration would have been Art the Clown from Terrifier, which, I mean, makes complete sense. Like, Dolly and Art have very similar, like, you know, kind of white face, kind of like scary but goofy kind of aesthetics in a way to them. So I think there's no physical way that Dolly would be in the bottom of this episode. I just don't see it. Due to the fact that they are so similar, Dolly and Art, while I do think that is an advantage and that guarantees that safety at the least, I also think that it almost guarantees Dolly not winning the challenge, because you really want to, like, reinvent it. You want it to be known who you're talking about, but you really want to reinvent it. And I think Dolly would be either high or safe, specifically due to the fact that I don't feel like Dolly would really reinvent Art the Clown. So I decided to put Dolly as safe because of that, just going with my gut of what I'd have to choose, I feel like, between high or safe, and also due to the fact that originally we had 3 contestants play safe. It was Mary, Cherry, J. Jolie, and Saint. I think Mary Cherry should have been in the bottom. I think a lot of people think Mary Cherry should have been in the bottom of this episode, so I feel like it would have been incredibly odd to do 4 high placements and 2 saves. Like, that just would be weird. So I think looking at all of it, it just makes sense to say, Dolly would probably be higher safe. I don't know. Let's just put her as safe. That's what feels right to me in this moment. But really, a bunch of the placements are the same. The top placements are all exactly the same. Astra Dorelia is going to win this episode with her alien-inspired look, which is so very wonderful and nice. It's such a good look. Hoso Teratoma, Coco Kane, and Sigourney Beaver are all going to place high in this challenge. Jay Jolie and Saint are going to place safe as they did originally. Now, looking at the bottom, we do have a bit of a shake up here. Originally, Mary Cherry, who I put as being eliminated in this episode, was safe. Now she's in the bottom too because, I mean, her Stay Puffed Marshmallow Man was just not it. Like, I mean, she didn't really reinvent the character. She kind of just dressed up as the character, and there was questionable choices with what she chose to do when she dressed up as the character. So, like, I don't think there's any reason that Mary Cherry would be anywhere above the bottom, honestly. Now, I could have done like a bottom 3 here or something, but I decided not to. I decided to, since Mary Cherry is going to be in that bottom 2, push Formaldehyde up from the bottom into the low placement. I really liked Formelda's look. Like, you can tell it's Billy the Puppet, and it's fully in Formelda's style, and I feel like that's kind of the brief of the challenge, more or less. Like, do a horror character reimagined with your drag, and that's kind of exactly what she did. I do agree of the critique that the character and the runway itself was very small. It was just, like, not as much. It didn't feel as grand in comparison to really everybody else's. And, I mean, I don't really care about the fucking Club Kid boots. I mean, they went with the outfit, so, like, I'm not pressed about it. But I do think in comparison to a lot of the other outfits, it just wasn't as notable sitting in my mind. But I really don't see a reason why Formelda should have been in the bottom here. I think low is a perfectly fair placement for her. So she's going to move up into the low placement alongside Bitter Betty, who was there originally. And the bottom 2 are going to be La Zavaleta and Mary Cherry. Now, I think this would be very fucking intriguing because they are the 2 that we get introduced to in the first episode as being, like, I don't want to say instigators, but I'm gonna say instigators. And I don't mean instigators in a bad way. I mean, they're the people that are willing to start a conversation that might turn into an argument, and if it does, they're willing to back themselves up. And I respect that. I respect someone who is willing to start shit and finish it. So, like, I think, well, I do think there are things during the season that Zavaleta and Mary said that were just not good, fucking terrible things to say in regards to, like, Sigourney and, like, Formelda and a bunch of other people. I do think that Dragula is a show that is not afraid of conflict, and I appreciate that there's people that are unapologetically willing to provide it. I just don't like when, they're being misogynistic to Sigourney, for example. That's not fun to me, and not really to anybody. But we'll talk about more of that later. So Zavaleta and Mary are going to be the bottom 2, and it's going to be a gag because they are 2, big characters in this first episode. And for their extermination challenge, they have to be buried alive and have bugs and dirt and water dumped all over them. And I think Mary would kind of freak the fuck out. Zavaleta freaked out a little bit at points, but was able to really kind of keep herself grounded. And especially due to the added context that earlier, before this extermination, when she finds out she's in the bottom and has to do this, she's freaking out because literally her sister passed. And that's the last time she's been at a graveyard, was because of her sister passing. And being able to pull through that and actually do a very good job in the extermination is a fucking commendable thing for me. So Zavaleta is going to stay here and Mary is going to be eliminated episode 1. And I think this is also going to be a gag because Mary Cherry, well, I personally had not heard of her prior to this season. She is kind of one of the bigger names coming into this season as a whole. So the fact that she is going to get eliminated first is, I think, a very intriguing point to add to this whole narrative here. But we're going to move on to episode 2. In episode 2, we have the Nosferatu Beach Party. where the contestants have to get into pairs and create beach vampire looks and do a lip sync about it on the main stage. So originally Mary Cherry was in this episode, now she is not. Now Formelda Hyde is in this episode. La Zavaleta wins the Fright Feat, so she's able to assign the pairs for this episode. And while I do think on some level the pairings mattered, I think as a whole they really don't. Like, I do think, maybe placements could have been a little bit shifted. Like, maybe somebody who was low could have been safe if they had a different partner. Somebody who was safe could be high or something. But, like, I think pretty much in all scenarios, Saint was always going to, like, win the challenge. And the 4 that I have listed as being low and at the bottom would have been some combination in the bottom. So ultimately, I'm essentially just treating this as Zavaleta puts Coco Kane with Formelda Hyde instead of being with Mary Cherry. We do know what Formelda's vampire beach party look would have been. I'm going to throw it up on the screen right now for y'all to see. And I mean, it's, like, fine. It actually is pretty reminiscent as a whole of, like, Bitter Betty's look here in this challenge. And considering that Betty was in the bottom 2 originally, doesn't make me feel good about Formelda's chances in terms of the look department. And also, it is a lip-syncing challenge. And since Formelda is a mask performer, they're going to have to either have a mask that can move, like the mouth can move, or it's going to have to be set up in a way where their actual mouth is exposed. And since this mask that Formelda has here doesn't entirely seem to be the case, I am a little bit worried for Formelda's chances in this challenge. And also, we saw kind of on the stage in the last episode that she can kind of serve something on the runway in terms of, like, the performance of an outfit and stuff. But in comparison to everybody else here, it didn't really wow me as much. So I'm inclined to believe that Formelda would have been either low or in the bottom in this episode, and I feel like the bottom is the most appropriate place for her to be. But almost every other placement in this episode is exactly the same. Really all we have is Formelda being stuck into the bottom 3 in this episode, and originally Zavaleta was high, but I decided to move her down to safe, because I thought she did a fine job, but I really wasn't the biggest fan of her outfit. It didn't really fit her 100% in the way that I would have liked it to. And while she did a pretty good job overall, it was, like, solidly my 4th favorite. Like, it wasn't like, oh, she did almost as good as, like, Dolly or Hoso. Like, no, it was a very solid 4th place for me. Very Miss Fiercelicious. So I decided to put her down in the safe placement instead. But Saint is going to win this challenge as she did originally. Dolly and Hoso are going to be high. Jade and Sigourney are safe. Coco Kane is low, and the bottom 3 are Astrid Aurelia, Bitter Betty, and Formelda Hyde. And in this extermination, they're going to have to plunge their limbs into leech-infested waters and get leeches on them and stuff. Just fun, cute little things for lighthearted television. And we saw in the episode prior that when some worms were dumped on Formelda in the extermination that actually happened that she was in with the being buried alive, she was a screamer. She screamed about it, and I can't imagine anything different would happen here. Astrid was also a screamer in this elimination. She was screaming a bunch, but I think they would have been pretty similar levels of screaming. And due to the fact that Astrid just won the previous episode and Formelda was in the low placement, because I believe they would have performed similarly in the challenge proper and in the extermination, I think it is fairer and would be more likely that Formelda would go home here. So Formelda is going to be leaving, and we're going to move on to episode 3. In episode 3, we have the Weird Wild West Challenge, where they have to create sci-fi Wild West looks and present them on the main stage. Now, in this episode, I kept every placement the same, except since Mary isn't here and Astrid is being swapped in for the safe placement that Mary originally had. We do know what Astrid's look would have been, and here it is. I'm going to put it up on the screen for y'all. And it is a pretty solid look overall. I think in comparison to all of the other looks, it's definitely in the safe tier for me. It could be high maybe, but I don't know. I feel like safe is a pretty solid way to put it, and it's kind of where my heart leans in comparison to the other looks that we got this episode. So I think she deserves to just be safe. But La Zavaleta is going to win this challenge. Her look was amazing. Bitter Betty, Dolly, and Sigourney are going to be high. Astrid, Hoso, and Jade are going to be safe. And the bottom two are going to be Saint and Coco Kane. The extermination is they have to ride a mechanical bull for as long as possible. Yee fucking ha, man. And really, we never got to see the times that they rode these bulls. Like, we never got to see that. We never got to know how long they rode the bulls for. So it's like, okay, what are we doing? Like, I guess we kind of just have to go off track record here. And based off track record, we have a safe and a win and a high and a low. And a safe and a win beats a high and a low. So, sorry to Coco. Like, that's kind of it, really. That's really all I can say. Like we don't have context for it. So I'm just going off of what happened originally and who's done better in the competition as of yet. So, sorry to miss Coco Kane. And we're moving on to episode 4. In episode 4, we have the Monsters of Rock challenge. I don't know why my voice cracked there, but regardless, I'm gonna skip over it. Don't talk about it in the comments. I dare you. I'll bite your heart out. I don't fucking know. But in this challenge, they have to slip? Oh my god. Split into 2 teams of 4, where they have to perform the Poppy song Bite Your Teeth on the main stage and, be a rock band about it. Now, these groups were split in the way they were by the Boulets, as for what they said, to cause the most drama. Now, I mean, sure. Like, one group caused a lot of drama, the other group caused no drama. And also, like, I don't know, putting all 3 of the competing challenge winners on one team and none on the other feels like kind of shitty. Yes, I want the dramatics, but I also kind of want the teams to be balanced, Like, I want there to be a nice split. And in the original season, we did not get that nice split. And because, I don't feel like I have the authority to say what the best way to split these would be, I just decided to, again, input Astrid into Mary's spot, which would be on Team Glamrot with Sigourney, Jade, and Betty. I do think this would cause some amount of drama, because then you have Dolly and Astrid, who, Astrid is Dolly's drag child, on separate teams, which is essentially forcing one of them to be in the bottom almost, which I think would cause some tension and some drama. But that's really the only reasoning I think that would make sense for that. But regardless, I don't think there's a fair way to split these teams anyway, because who knows who the fuck is gonna choose who to, be on their team. There was no Fright Feet this episode, so there's no precedent for who would pick. And the way that they were chosen originally is kind of shady in itself, so I just decided to do it this way, because I thought it was the least fucked up thing I could do to the whole situation. So, Team Zenith, aka Dolly, Hoso, Teratoma, Zavaleta, and Saint are going to be the top team. Like, they fucking killed it in this episode, I think. The Blaze were kind of upset with the performances, but, I really liked Team Zenith's performance. I think they did pretty good. Yeah, there was a little fuck up there at a point, Zavaleta fell, but, that's 2 seconds out of, a 3-minute thing that, weren't good. And I don't know, a 2-second to 3-minute average is pretty nice. Or I guess actually, I guess if we're being technical, a 1 second to a minute 50 average. Wait, no, not a minute 50, a minute 30. I'm gonna bite my teeth, like Poppy said to do, I guess. But regardless of my inability to speak, Team Zenith wins. Dolly is the front person of the performance, so Dolly is gonna get the win of this challenge. And I gotta say, I don't like also that they designated who would be, the lead singers of the group. The Boulets were okay, Dolly's lead singer of group 1 and Sigourney's lead singer of group 2. And I don't like that at all, because it essentially sets 2 people up to win the challenge, is kind of the scenario that we get. If they're allowed to themselves, choose, the structure of who is the lead singer, or if the group wants, everybody to be the lead singer at some point and, take charge in that performance, then, they should have the ability to, do that. But by saying that Dolly and Sigourney are the leads of the group, they're putting a bunch of responsibility on them, And they're essentially making it so that whichever group wins, Dolly or Sigourney are going to win the challenge, which is just not fair. It's just not fair to me. But I mean, it is reality TV. There's going to be some fudgy business regardless of whatever the scenario is. So, like, you know, you just kind of got to live with it. And also, this episode really was bogged down by the fucking treatment that Sigourney got by Mary and Zavaleta when it happened. It was bad. It's so bad. I fucking hate that it happened. I am glad that we get to see later on in the season, after really everybody else who say these unnecessarily shady and bad things during the season, aka really Mary and Betty, after they're gone, we get to see Zavaleta in this, like, new light, where Zavaleta, I think, is just more calm, having gone farther into the competition, and also, really nobody is going to back her up like how Betty or Mary would have if it was earlier in the competition. So once we get later into the season, I'm like, oh my god, Zavaleta is amazing. I love Zavaleta. But at this episode, I'm like fast forwarding because I want her to stop talking. It's like, I don't want to call anybody a villain or anything, but like, this is literally, like, it's Dragula. So like, I gotta say, like, Betty, Zavaleta, and Mary are like absolute villains on this season, and they do bad things. They talk in not nice ways that aren't like shady or anything, they're just rude. And so it's like, I kind of have a hard time watching parts of this season in a way, because I'm just like watching two people go at somebody who did nothing to them, and it's not fun. It's just not fun. It's not fun. But anyways, that's the last of my gripes with the conflict and stuff on the season that I'm going to be bringing up in this video. So our bottom team, which is Team Glamrot, they are not all going to be in the extermination. Sigourney is going to be safe from the extermination, I decided, because Sigourney easily does the best in the challenge. Now, originally, Mary was here, and now we have Astrid. How would Astrid do? I think a fine job. I think Astrid would have done a much better job of, like, helping Sigourney and trying to get everything together. But regardless, I still think it would have come across as Sigourney did everybody in the group's work, and everybody else on the team, being Astrid, Jade, and Betty, would be in the bottom. So in this extermination, they are put into electric little shock chairs, and they get to shock their fellow people up for extermination and get some, you know, electroshock therapy, so to say. And at this point, Betty does have the worst track record, and I think did a worse job than Jade from what we saw originally. And I think Astrid would do a better job than Betty as well. So I do think Betty would have done the worst in this episode as well, so I do think it is most fair for Betty to go home here. So we're going to move on to episode 5. In episode 5, we have the Ghost Ship Glamour Challenge, where they have to, you know, create glamorous, ghostly nautical looks. We have Astrid in this episode instead of Betty, and here is Astrid's look. Now, I think it is clever. Like, I get what you're going for. You're going for, like, a ship wrapped up, you know, by a fucking, like, kraken. Like, I get that, obviously. But, like, I don't get Ghost. I don't get Ghost at all. Like, I kind of feel like the whole point of it was supposed to be, like, what you would find at the bottom of the sea. Like, the ghosts of the ship that you'd find at the bottom, or, like, you know, the fucking corals, like, sticking up from the fucking ship, like, the ship decaying at the bottom. Like, I feel like it's all supposed to be, like, sunken ship glamour. But this, like, doesn't give me ghost ship. It gives me more, like, nautical as just a general concept than ghost ship specifically. And I think looking at the competitors and the way that they perform this episode, I think for me that makes Astrid's look my third least favorite, which is going to put her in the bottom in this episode. Now, in this episode, the contestants had the opportunity to find a key that would either save themselves from extermination or put somebody up for extermination of their choosing. Jay Jolie found the key. So, originally, she decided to put up Bitter Betty for extermination, but Bitter Betty is not here anymore. So, what would she do in this scenario? I think there is a not zero chance that she would put Zavaleta up in the bottom where Zavaleta was originally, regardless, so it didn't really matter. But I also think with Betty not being here, and Zavaleta being the only other person that she's kind of feuded with in any respect on this season, I also think there's a very decent chance that she would just use the key to save herself, which, I mean, if we're going by my personal rankings of what would have happened, Jade was my 4th favorite already. So she would have been safe from the extermination regardless. But I do think both of those are valid options for what could have happened, but they wouldn't have actually changed anything. Sigourney Beaver wins this challenge. She does an incredible job here. And Dolly and Saint are going to be placing high. All of them as they were placed originally. Jade Jolie is going to be safe, and the bottom 3 are going to be Hoso Teratoma, La Zavaleta, and Astrid Aurelia. They are going to have to take beach photos in their looks with rough fucking waves at night, and it is actually a very fun extermination to watch to me. But at this point, Astrid has the worst track record, and I think Astrid, considering how they reacted to, like, the leeches extermination, and, like, I feel like they're a screamer. Like, we know that they're a screamer in these exterminations. I feel like that's a fair thing to say. I think Astrid would have been a screamer, for sure. I mean, they were all kind of screamers, but Astrid would have been a screamer. So, I think Astrid, those two facts being combined, I think Astrid is the most fair option to go home this episode. And also, it would have been interesting storyline-wise to have Hoso and Astrid in the bottom 3 together, because they're two who got along very well, you know, very confusing attraction towards each other. Not confusing that there is an attraction, just confusing that of the way it's been presented across, you know, Dragula Season 4 and Dragula Titans, which, I mean, if you want to see me do a Dragula Titans video, I'd love to do that. But, you know, the fact that that is like a storyline thing that probably would have been expanded more on in this scenario, it would have been interesting to see it culminate in an elimination where one of them goes home. So sorry to Miss Astrid, she is going to go home here, and we're going to move on to episode 6. Episode 6 was the Hairy Monsters Challenge, where they had to create outfits based off of a real or fictional hairy monster and present them on the main stage. Now, originally, the way that this episode was judged, Hoso Teratoma won, and Dolly and Saint were high, which I kept. I kept all that the same. But Zavaleta was low, and Sigourney and Jade were the bottom 2. Now, looking at Jade's look, I really liked it. I thought it was a fun idea to do Krampus. Like, doing, like, a Christmas fucking thing on Dragula is always fun to me. Like, bringing in any other, like, holiday or other situation is so funny, in my opinion. I mean, they literally have Christmas outfits for the fucking reunion this season. So, like, I love that. And I think looking at all of the outfits in this episode, Jade was, like, my 3rd favorite. So, like, I think it's really only fair that Jade is high this episode. And also, we get to see in this episode, Jade is struggling with the death of their cat, who Jade had to literally FaceTime them putting her cat down, like, the day before the filming for this episode started. So I think this would have been a great way and a great episode where we see Jade struggle with this hard experience and then get the first positive critiques that she's gotten throughout the whole season of being like, yeah, you did a pretty damn good job this episode. And we get that redemption arc. It would have been so nice to me. I would have loved to see it. We didn't get to see it, unfortunately. Jade just goes home in this episode. And while I do think, you know, Jade's head was kind of out of the competition a bit at this point, she still fucking served on the floor show. So, like, I feel like she should have been high. That's what I feel. So, that, in essence, makes it so that Zavaleta and Sigourney Beaver are now the bottom 2 because they were in the bottom originally, and I do think that Zavaleta's look was worse than Jade's. I mean, it's just like Cat in the Hat, but fucked up, which, like, could be a fun concept, but I just don't really see it. I don't really, like, I get you're going for Cat in the Hat, but it really just gives the appearance of you're trying to act murderous in a fursuit. Like, that's really all I get. Like, I don't get much specifically Cat in the Hat. But regardless, they are going to be locked in a room with a whole bunch of cockroaches and have cockroaches crawling all on them. Cockroaches. Basco! Cockroaches fall from the ceiling onto their fucking heads and have to withstand that. And, I mean, Sigourney was a screamer in this challenge. She absolutely was. And Zavaleta wasn't that much of a screamer in their first extermination, where they were, you know, covered in bugs and, you know, in the coffin that they were in. But I do think in this scenario where it's, like, cockroaches and stuff, I think they probably would have done a little bit more screaming. And also, at this point, this is Sigourney's first time in the bottom at all, where this is Zavaleta's third time in the bottom. So, based off a track record and due to the fact that I think they would have done similar levels in that extermination, I think it is more fair to say goodbye to Zavaleta here. So, she is going to go, and we're going to move on to episode 7. In episode 7, we have the Exorcisters acting challenge, where they have to assign their roles and act in a, you know, exorcism, you know, short film. And they also have to present demon looks on the runway, but I feel like the judging this episode should be more focused on the acting challenge, just as a whole. Like, I feel like the runways can, like, break the tie, but I feel like for the way that this is set up, they spend so much time talking about the acting challenge that is the aspect of this episode that I'm going to be using to mostly judge the episode as a whole. So, originally, Zavaleta won the Fright Feat and was able to assign the roles. She's not here anymore. We have Jade instead. So, the Fright Feat was to recreate Peaches Christ's eyebrows. And if you don't know who Peaches Christ is, first of all, look her up. Second of all, here's what her eyebrows look like. So, they have to recreate them. And I would say, looking at the 5 who did it originally, I think Saint did the second best job. They were the correct shape, they were just too little. How would Jade do? I don't know. I think she would do fine. Like, I really can't tell. But, I mean, due to the fact that she would have had to have done better than 4 people to win this Fright Feat, and we have no clue how she would have done, I think it just makes most sense to go with who did the second best originally, who Peaches Christ herself said was one of her favorites when judging it. That would be Saint. So, how would Saint assign the roles? Now, I think Saint would most likely still give the possessed child role to Hoso. Hoso is the youngest person on this cast, and is kind of like the baby of the group as a whole. So I think that Saint still would have given that role to Hoso. Now, the question is, would Saint want to give herself a big role in doing the priest, or would she have wanted to be one of the mothers with somebody? I think there is merit to both. I can see Saint having this power and saying, I want to be the fucking lead. I want to be the person who has the most lines. Like, I can see that for her. But I also see Saint as somebody who got to critique really the whole season of being somebody who was afraid to really perform with a whole lot of, like, bite and, like, really a whole lot of, like, you know, like, power to their performances. Like, their performances are much more ethereal and, you know, are the kind that, like, keep you wondering. They're not as much of, like, the ones that, you know, punch you in the face and make you feel something like that way. You know what I mean? So it really is a conflict in my brain of whether I think Saint would have gone for the more punchy role or for the more, you know, team-oriented role where she can work with somebody she wants. I think she would probably choose to be one of the mothers, is what I'm going with. And I think she would choose Sigourney as the other mother. Not from Coraline. Host already took care of that in episode 1. I think she probably would have chosen to be one of the mothers with Sigourney. And she would have given Dolly the priest and Jade the lab assistant. I think that's what would have happened. I think it could change up slightly, but I do think that's probably how the roles would have been doled out. Now, at this point, we already mentioned last episode, Jade was a bit out of her head in terms of the competition. And I think with this role, and with Jade not being in the right headspace, I think Jade's landing in the bottom 2 no matter what. The question is who joins her? Now, originally Dolly and Sigourney were in the bottom as well. But I think in this scenario, Sigourney getting to be one of the mothers, I think, definitely lends to, one, it being a more visible role. Both of those roles are kind of on the same playing field with each other. They're bouncing off of each other, whereas the role she had originally, which was the lab assistant, is really under the wing of the priest role the whole time. So I think even though she did an alright job originally when it happened with the lab assistant role, I think she would have ended up doing a better job with being one of the mothers. So I think she would have at least been safe. And with Hoso originally winning the challenge and being the same character, and Saint originally being high, and also potentially having the exact same character as well, I think it makes sense to move Sigourney up to a safe placement. It could have been a high. I decided to just go with safe here because I felt like a high placement was a bit too egregious. And I decided to keep Dolly in the bottom. I think Dolly did not give the most convincing performance overall as one of the mothers originally, and I think probably would have done the same thing that she was clocked for originally if she had done the priest, and that is doing the white face paint as the priest. I don't think that would have gone over well. It did not go over well as the mother. It would not have gone over well with me if she did that as the mother, and it also would not have gone over well with me if she did it as being the priest. So I think, with all that being said, it makes most sense that Dolly and Jade are the bottom two, and Hoso and Saint keep their placements of a win and a high placement respectively. Now, Jade and Dolly have to be fucking vacuum sealed against a wall, which honestly I kind of want to do. Like, that is intense. Like, that is the kind of Dragula extermination I want to do so bad. Like, I would love to do that. I would love to do the electric shocks. I think that would hurt like a motherfucker, but I think it'd be great television. The one Dragula extermination that they've done, not on this season, just in general, that I don't want to do at all is fucking be pierced by fucking body mod needles. Like, what the fuck? Like, I am not sticking any needle literally bigger than like a fucking tattoo needle or like a shot or like a fucking needle to pierce my ears. Like, I'm not sticking any needle that's larger than any of those needles into my body. I'm not doing that. If I had to participate in that extermination, I would quit. Like, legit. That fucking fucks me up. I don't want to do that at all. The extermination that they do this season that I would least like to do, I think would be... Oh, wait. It would be the cockroach room, for sure. I don't like cockroaches. That would suck. I'd be fine with the bugs and the buried alive challenge, I think, but I would not want to do the fucking cockroaches. That I think that'd be my least favorite, personally, but tangent aside, looking at the track records, Dolly has a much better track record at this point than Jade, and as we saw, Dolly did a pretty alright job in this challenge. Like, it was kind of hard to tell because, I mean, they're literally fucking vacuum sealed. They really can't, like, scream that much. But if I'm remembering correctly, looking at the performances by Dolly, Sigourney, and Zavaleta originally in this extermination, I think Dolly really didn't move that much as a whole. Dolly really wasn't, like, struggling against it. So I think Dolly probably would have won this, and Jade would be sent home. And we're going to move on to episode 8. Okay, in episode 8, we have the Killer Clowns Challenge, where they have to create outfits as killer clowns and present them on the runway. Now, I really, really, really struggled with judging this episode. I still don't feel 100% about the way I judged it, but I decided with the way that I've decided to do it. Originally, Dolly did win this challenge. He is gonna keep the win here. I didn't really get their concept for the fucking clown. Like, they're a fucking candy corn clown. That's what they are. I think their clown name is Sweet Tooth, if I'm remembering correctly. And their whole thing is, like, having candy corn. And it's like, okay, sure. But, like, that doesn't really give me killer clown as much, you know? I really like Saint's look. Now, I have to say, I am very personally biased. The fucking look of, like, the black and white stripe fucking poofy sleeve with, like, a fucking high-waisted pant or an overall is literally, like, my favorite look. Just, like, in general. I fucking love it. I feel so sexy to me, but also so sinister. Just as a concept, literally, like if I were to have a fashion line, or, like, have a runway show, which is going to happen in no universe ever, but just regardless, if that were to happen, it would be looks like the one that Saint presented. It's just so fashion to me. I love it. I love it so much. And I kind of got a bit more Killer Clown from it as well. And also, Saint's clown is so sinister. It is a freaky fucking face that Saint painted on that day. So I really love what Saint did here, and I was so close to putting Saint as the winner of this challenge, but I decided against it. Because I do think, looking at the prompt of Killer Clowns and creating a clown character, I do think Dolly hits that more on the head than Saint does. But it really is like a 51-49% thing to me. Like, it's so close in my head. Now, looking at Hoso and Sigourney, they were in the bottom originally with Saint, and they're going to stay there. Sigourney has a malfunction on stage with her props, and Hoso has these masks that fucking turn around and are just, like, painted, and you're just kind of like, okay, well, these aren't faces, these are just little masks. And obviously they're masks and not faces, but, like, I want that illusion to be kept still. Like, I shouldn't be seeing the masks, like, blow in the wind around, and I just see the, like, red acrylic paint on the inside, you know what I mean? With the runway performances, I do think it is most fair that Hoso Teratoma and Sigourney Beaver are in the bottom for this challenge. Now, for the Extermination Challenge, they just have to fucking get into some fucking carts and do a cart race. That's all they have to do. Everybody participates in it. They get pied along the way. But, you know, it's a very fun little stroll where you know, maybe get some cream in your hair. Ooh. That's literally not what I meant by it when I said it, but, I mean, we're keeping it. I'm gonna keep that in the video. Like, why the fuck would I not? But usually, every season of Dragula ends up with a top 3 going into the finale. This season, they decided to do a top 4, and they acted like it was a big deal. Like, they literally say during the finale that they're never gonna do it again. But, like, it's not that big of a deal. Like, it's one more person. And, like, literally, if you think that all 4 of these artists have stuff that they need to show in the fucking finale episode and could genuinely be crowned America's Next Drag Super Monster, then why the fuck not keep them in? I don't see what the fucking point is of not doing it. So they're all gonna stay as they did originally, and we're gonna find that out in the reunion episode. In the reunion, they just, like, talk about shit, and they reveal who's in the finale, which is all of them. So that's really all we have to talk about. In the finale, the contestants have to present 3 runway looks based on the 3 tenets of Dragula, which are filth, horror, and glamour. And looking at all of the runways presented in this episode and in their performances throughout the competition, I think it is most fair if Dolly wins the season. Dolly has the best track record going into the finale. And while I do think Hoso does the best in this finale, as a whole, I think Dolly is a very close second. So I think looking at all of that together, it makes the most sense for Dolly to win the season. And while they're all listed as runner-ups, if I were to technically rank them in terms of 1st through 4th place, it would be in this order. Dolly would be 1st, Hoso would be 2nd, Saint would be 3rd, and Sigourney would be 4th. I think looking at the runways, I think Dolly kills the filth runway. It's my favorite one in the filth category, I would say, but Hoso's is so close behind. It is truly, again, like a 51% to 49%. Like, I own 51% of this runway look. Like, that is what I feel in regards to those 2 looks. Looking at the horror runways, Hoso's is my favorite of that category. It is my favorite. And Dolly's is probably my 2nd favorite. So we're really just kind of flip-flopping. And looking at the glamour, I think Hoso's is my favorite, but again, Dolly is my 2nd favorite. So looking at it all, I do think, again, Hoso wins this finale for me. But it's only by literally 1 placement swap over Dolly. And also, in looking at the competition prior to this episode, Dolly has done the best so far, whereas looking at the track records, Hoso has done 3rd best. So I think all that combined, again, Dolly is going to win this season. But I mean, they all fucking do a great job in this finale. And they all do a great job during the season as well. All of their art is so fucking cool. I love them all so much. Like, I kind of want to do a video of just, like, ranking my favorite Dragula runways. Would y'all like that? Would y'all want to see it? Like, that is something I kept thinking of while I was rewatching the season. I was like, oh my god, like, some of these runways, people just don't talk about, and they need to talk about them, because they're fucking iconic. But regardless, let's get to the track records. Here are the track records for the season. A win is worth 5 points, high is worth 4, safe is 3, low is 2, bottom is 1, and a limb is obviously 0. Add them all up, divided by the episodes, and we get our PPE scores for everybody. Dolly and Hoso have the exact same track records in my version of the season as they did originally. They're truly so close to being the same. And Saint is only 1 placement off. Just that last high placement changed it to a bottom, and that was Saint's original track records. So everybody who made the finale, I judged pretty similarly to the way that they were judged on their original season. And a lot of the switch-ups in terms of placements are with people who got eliminated earlier in the season, with the only person outside of the top 4 keeping their same placement being Coco Kane. So I think the people who made the finale were judged really fairly on their drag in comparison to everybody else's, and I think with these revisions, hopefully this season would be a bit less conflict-filled, not removing good conflict, removing bad conflict, and would have just been a more fun experience overall of showcasing our lifting people up. Would have had more fun with it as a whole, hopefully. But that is going to be it for this video. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you wish. Leave your thoughts, feelings, and opinions down below. As always, I will leave my Twitter handle linked down below if you want to go follow me on there. Again, thank you all so much for watching, and as always, take care. Bye-bye.